Lows and Highs of Adrien Agreste, the Miraculous Ladybug fanfiction written by Black Cat's Butterflies. Voice and record, Harpsigirl. Chapter 7. Crying. That's how Adrien had spent the rest of that evening. He couldn't tell you how long they sat there, but eventually there was nothing left to shed. After he ran out of tears, his lady had given him a huge squeeze, and they both went to their separate ways. He missed her warmth. Once he got home, he de-transformed and numbly headed to the bathroom to brush his teeth. He peered at the shower, dreading anything other than sleep right now. It was Friday. He could take one tomorrow. Plague flew over as he spit out his toothpaste. "Adrien?" he said. Adrien peered at him and only shrugged. "I think I just want to head to bed," he muttered. "Okay," his squammy nodded understandingly. "Sweet common dreams." He wasn't even in the mood to appreciate the pun. Dragging his feet over to his closet, he quickly changed into his pajamas, then snuggled into bed. His eyes scanned the ceiling. It was just so tall. His room was so big and so full of random shit his father had bought over the years. Apparently, Gabriel thought being materialistic might make up for his lack of affection. Yet it was also so empty. He had never wanted anything more than to run away and go back to her. Ladybug curd. Marinette curd too. He wasn't sure how long he spent spaced out, but eventually he heard a knock at his door. "Adrien?" Natalie asked. "Yeah?" "You have to take your long-acting." Long-acting insulin. It took 24 hours to completely work and was used to control blood sugar throughout the whole day. While he took short-acting every time he ate, all that did was cover for his food, not for when his sugar naturally rose. He was supposed to take it every day at 9 p.m. He turned to look at the alarm clock on the side of his bed. "Come in." Natalie stepped into his room with his supplies. She sat down on his bed and twisted the needle cap onto the long-acting pen. It was a different brand, actually. Lantus instead of short-acting, which was called Humalog. She primed the needle, giving it a flick to get rid of the air bubbles, and passed it to Adrien. "Thank you," he muttered, sighing, and he selected 14 units. That number stayed the same every night. He pinched his stomach and inserted the shot, wincing as he felt the insulin fluid through his skin. The more he gave, the more it hurt. Even after the shot was done, he could still feel it spreading. Natalie passed him his finger pricker and he tested his blood. 111. Wow, he was in range. He had a normal blood sugar for the first time ever. Adrien couldn't help but feel like he was supposed to be excited about this. But in actuality, he really didn't care. Not right now, at least. And he wanted Natalie to get out and give him some space before she would inevitably check in on him again. "That's the first good number we've gotten," Natalie smiled. "Good job," she said as if he'd done actual work to get it this way. He didn't do anything. His doctor just gave him a new ratio to determine how much insulin he gave. He was just getting more of it now. She swept all the needles into the red sharps container on his nightside table. "Good night, Adrien." "It's not like it's the last time you'll be in here," he said slightly bitterly. "You're gonna come check my blood every 3 hours anyway. Why even say good night?" Natalie sighed. "Adrien, I must. This is what your doctor said to do. How else would we know what your levels are when you're asleep? It's just annoying. I have no privacy." "What could you possibly be doing all night that requires privacy?" She raised an eyebrow. Adrien shrugged. "Fighting an Akuma," he thought. "I don't know. Are you just gonna be pricking my fingers every time I go to the bed for the rest of my life? No, Adrien. There are other solutions for this, which you will discuss at your next appointment with Dr. Moore. Dr. Moore was his endocrinologist, or his diabetes doctor. He saw her once when he was first diagnosed and could continue to do so every 3 months. But for now, I need to go to bed. It's not easy waking up that often. Good night. Good night, Natalie. She shut the door behind her, and Adrien sighed, peering back up at the ceiling. Thoughts of Ladybug and the marionette swarmed his head again. He could use some comfort right about now. You just had some. Don't be greedy. His stomach still slightly hurt from the shot he'd given. He absent-mindedly rubbed the spot. Adrien tried to drift off, turning from his back to his left side, then the right side, but sleep never came. Plague? He called into the silence of his big, dark, empty bedroom. Yeah, kid? Came a voice. Plague now slept by his video games and bookshelves up on the top level of his room. They couldn't risk Natalie finding him at night. He started. Never mind. He got up and walked into the bathroom. Maybe he should take a quick shower. The hot water might help him sleep. He flicked on the light, squinting and blinking from the sudden brightness. He pulled off his pajama top, tossing it to the side, then caught a glance of himself in the mirror. Adrien was a model. By definition, that meant he was beautiful. And, truth be told, he knew he was handsome. At 16, he was tall, lean, with just the right amount of muscle. But now there was something else. Little dots sprinkled on his stomach, marks, scars. Real physical proof that something was wrong with him now. There were even more bruises from previous shots and some discolored skin from a healed one. Each mark was small, but that didn't make it any better. He stirred, and stirred, and stirred some more. Then, for the second time that night, let it all out. Saturday was uneventful. He had piano at 9 a.m. and Chinese lesson at 11 a.m. But other than that, he spent the rest of the day in his room doing nothing. Sure, he could play games online with Nino, call up Alia, or maybe head over to Marinette's for some lunch. But he was just so weak. So when the Akuma alert went off, just after he had bolused, given himself insulin, he was not amused. Guess lunch will have to wait, he grumbled. Adrien, are you sure you should leave without eating? Plague asked, floating in front of him. I have to, he replied. Not looking forward to it, though. Adrien stood up, heading over to the window. Plague, close out. Hey, Kitty, Ladybug said as Shad landed beside her. How are you after last night? He finished for her. Yeah, are you okay? I'm fine, he lied. Akuma first, then maybe they could talk. She seemed to see right through him, if her expression was any indication, but she didn't comment on it. Shad cleared his throat. Who are we facing today? Guess who? She deadpanned. Mr. Pigeon? Assuming the obvious. Though he hadn't sneezed yet, so maybe he was wrong. Close, Mr. Rat, Ladybug groaned. Apparently he's not allowed to feed rodents in public either. Wonderful, Shad said. And then he saw him. Mr. Ramier looked like he was playing the Mouse King in the Nutcracker Ballet. Seriously, it was the stupidest Akuma costume he'd probably ever see. A grey onesie with a rat tail on the back, and what he wore on his face, a giant, probably papier-mâché, mouse head. Like giant, 4 times the size of normal. Mr. Ramir was going to break his neck. Atop the garment was a paper crown, and in his hands he held a flute. The fuck? I want to laugh, but at this point I just feel bad for the guy, Ladybug muttered. I have a feeling that this will be easy. You can say that again. Shat rolled his eyes. What's the plan? Well, every time he plays the flute, Rats follows his command just like the birds call when he's Mr. Pigeon. I bet the Akuma's in there, she said. So we gotta aim for that. They may not have given Mr. Rat enough credit. I mean, yeah, his power sucked ass, but he was really fast. Like, really fast. Within the first 10 minutes of fighting, Chanwa found himself already tired, struggling to keep up with the Akuma. He felt slightly lightheaded and sweat started collecting under his suit. Weird, he wasn't even running that much. This was nothing compared to villains in the past, such as Frozer or Frightingale. Shut! On your left! Shut barely managed to dodge the literal flying rat that crashed towards him. He jumped away and ended up falling to the ground, rolling on the pavement. Quickly he tried to pick himself up and almost failed to do so. Using a great amount of effort, though, he eventually got to his feet. Shat was suddenly so dizzy, out of absolutely nowhere. And not I spun around too much and now have a headache kind of dizzy. He felt like someone was squeezing his brain, like he was wearing a hat that was just a little too tight. He reached up to touch his head, making sure there wasn't a rat or something in his hair, but nothing was there. So why did he suddenly feel like this? Was he hit by something? Did Mr. Rat have another power they didn't know about yet? Suddenly something wrapped around him, quickly pulling him into an alleyway quite a distance away from the fight. Shat? What's going on? Are you okay? Ladybug asked, unwinding her yo-yo from his body. Yeah. He reached for his forehead. Just tired. It was getting hard to breathe now, too. Ladybug ran her hands over the bone structure of his cheeks. Her cool gloves felt good on his sweaty skin. When was the last time you ate? She asked. He tried to recall, but his brain was a bit foggy. He gave himself insulin before coming here, right? Yeah, because he was going to eat something, and he was supposed to eat every 3 hours, so... I had a snack a few hours ago. Why? You look malnourished, she said. Your cheeks are caving in. Are you sure that you're okay? He had been looking at Ladybug this whole time, and when he moved his gaze to the brick wall behind her, he saw her imprint. Like when you stare at the sun and can still see the figure when you look away. He could see her silhouette wherever his gaze landed, and Shat quickly realized that this wasn't the case for just her. Any object he had focused on, the trash, his baton, a piece of paper on the floor, whenever he looked away, he could still see the shape in his vision. He stumbled back a step, hitting the brick behind him. This was all weird, too weird. What was happening? Shat? Ladybug shook him. Are you okay? I think I need to sit for a bit, he said. Gravity started to pull him down, and not having the energy to disobey, he let it, sinking to the floor. Even as he sat, the force was still pushing, placing weight over his limbs and torso, almost like a weighted blanket that he couldn't escape. Panic kicked in. This didn't make any sense. Nothing was touching him. Ladybug! Chanwa! Mr. Rat yelled in the distance. Damn it! Ladybug cursed. Stay here. I'll be right back. She rushed away, and he heard her call for a lucky charm as she ran. Holding his transformation was becoming unbearable, and it was starting to take effort. The sweat began to kick up a notch. He could feel it in his hair now, and his heartbeat thumped more frantically. Close in. Adrien barely breathes. Plaque falls out of his ring, landing on the floor. I don't feel too great, he says. I need to eat. Can I have some Adrien? Anxiety rises in his chest. Somehow the transforming had made this all worse. The squeezing in his head becomes tighter, and he grips at his scalp. Tears run down his face out of pure fear as he attempts to calm down. What's happening to me? He cries, holding his hands out into view. It takes actual effort to lift them. They are visibly shaking, and he notices now, so is the rest of his body. In his feet are pins and needles, and his hands are in the way there. Adrien! He hears Plaque calling to him, but he can't respond, can't focus enough to form words. His head is pulsing now to the metronome of his heart, and the world becomes a blurry mess. He's going to pass out. He doesn't want to pass out. He cries harder now, sobbing, coughing, his breath hitching when he attempts to gulp down air. Never has he felt such immense terror in his life. What do I do? Am I going to die? How do I make this stop? The pins and needles slowly turn to numbness as Adrien realizes. He can barely wiggle his toes in his sneakers. Everything suddenly becomes loud, as if his ears had popped on a plane, and he hyperventilates again. All of his senses are going out of whack, disobeying the usual ways, and all he can think is this the end? He's lost all concept of time. Make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. His eyes are shut tight, and though he's aware of something going on around him, he doesn't even try to use the effort it takes to pay attention. He's still crying and he can't get a grip. Part of him is willing for it to end, for the lights to go out, or for consciousness to just leave him completely. Maybe for blackness to pull him in. Anything that will take the pain away. Someone's talking to him, he realizes, but he can't even acknowledge them, forget trying to figure out who exactly they are. He can't stop sweating, he can't stop crying, he can't anything. Something presses against his lips. A straw? He doesn't want it, doesn't want anything. He just needed this nightmare to end. The shaking hasn't stopped yet, it's only gotten worse. The straw retreats. Suddenly something jumps into his arm. He yelps. It's painful and it stays in his tricep for a moment before pulling away. He opens his eyes and through his still watery gaze they land on a ladybug, who is holding whatever had just hurt him. He reaches for her still, even though she was the one who did it. She hurt him, but he still wants her comfort, and so she wraps him up in her arms, seemingly mindful of squeezing him too tight. In an instant, Adrien's legs tingle. His head starts to clear. The volume of the world is starting to become quiet again. He feels like he's been brought back from the dead. It's only been 30 seconds, and then he's fine. Minutes of agony fixed in a moment, just like that. His head is still a bit foggy, and his heart is still racing, and he's still sweaty. God, he's so sweaty and cold and tired, but everything's okay again. Ladybug is stroking his cheeks, his hair, muttering to him small assurances. I've got you, she says. You're safe, it's okay, just breathe. He gulps. I'm scared, he says, finally finding his voice. That I was scared. He wipes his eyes with the back of his hand, and only then does he realize she's crying too. I am too, she says, softly, and he can see the truth of it on her face. She wraps him into another hug. They stay there like that, for a few more minutes. Another moment that he can't quite keep track of before she scoops his tired and weak and sweaty body into her arms. I'm taking you home now, she says, and Adrien holds on tight, taking comfort in his best friend. He doesn't even try to process what happened, just sinks into the embrace. The wind is cold. Adrien shivers. He had just been sweating buckets, but now he's freezing. She tucks him in bed, and he didn't even notice they had made it to the mansion. He falls asleep.